Springfield, Missouri, forever marked by a crime so shocking that it captivated the nation. The Blanchard family seemed to live an ordinary life, with Dee Dee Blanchard dedicated to the constant care of her seemingly ill daughter, Gypsy Rose. But beneath this image of love and devotion lay a tangled web of lies, manipulation, and unimaginable abuse. What appeared to be a mother's tireless love was, in reality, something much darker. A mother's control, a daughter's growing desperation, and a murder that left the world asking, what really happened behind closed doors? Join me as we unravel one of the most disturbing and tragic cases in recent history, where the truth is far more chilling than anyone could have imagined. In every family, there's always that one person who becomes the center of attention when they fall ill. The entire household revolves around their care, especially when a mother is involved. A mother's love knows no limits. She'll boil water, apply soothing balms, and prepare comforting meals like porridge, doing whatever it takes to care for her child. No task is too small, no effort too great, when her child's health is on the line. This case tells the story of a mother who embodied that devotion, a woman who poured everything into caring for her daughter, believed to be chronically ill. Dee Dee Blanchard's tireless efforts earned her sympathy and admiration from all who knew her. But how did this seemingly perfect family unravel so tragically? How did a mother so dedicated to her child's well-being meet her end at the hands of the very daughter she cared for? Claudine. Dee Dee Blanchard was born in Louisiana to Claude Anthony Sr. and Emma Gisclair, one of 5 siblings. From a young age, she was known for her stubborn nature, always finding a way to get what she wanted, whether by charm or, if necessary, by rebellion. At the age of 24, she met 17-year-old Rod Blanchard. The two quickly fell in love, and before long, Claudine became pregnant. Their rushed marriage was short-lived, but there was one thing they both agreed on: the name of their child. Rod was a huge fan of the band Guns N' Roses, while Claudine loved the name Gypsy, and so, their daughter was named Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Before Gypsy was even born, Rod decided to divorce Claudine, admitting that their marriage had been for all the wrong reasons. Just a few months later, on July 27, 1991, Claudine gave birth to their daughter, Gypsy. Initially, they continued living together, but soon after, Claudine moved out, taking Gypsy to her parents' house. Despite the end of their relationship, Rod was thrilled to become a father. He remained determined to stay involved in Gypsy's life, doing everything he could to be a part of her world. But Gypsy's childhood would be far from easy, as troubling events began to unfold early on. When Gypsy was just 3 months old, her health problems seemed to begin. Concerned about her daughter's difficulty sleeping, Claudine rushed her to the hospital, convinced that Gypsy was suffering from sleep apnea. However, after running numerous tests, doctors assured her that Gypsy had no such condition. But Claudine wasn't convinced. She was certain her daughter was ill, and in her mind, it was just a matter of discovering what the doctors were missing. She believed she knew Gypsy better than anyone else. So the question remained: why weren't the doctors trusting her motherly instincts? Claudine became convinced that Gypsy suffered from a chromosomal disorder, causing multiple illnesses. When doctors couldn't confirm her suspicions, Claudine decided to manage Gypsy's health on her own. As Gypsy grew older, Claudine insisted that her daughter was mentally weak, far behind other children her age. To Claudine, Gypsy was completely different from her peers. At this time, they were still living with Claudine's parents, who were overjoyed to have their granddaughter at home. Before Gypsy's arrival, life had been rather dull, but with her there, they spent their days playing with her, losing track of time and the joy she brought to their lives. When Gypsy was around 7 or 8 years old, she had a serious accident while riding her grandfather's motorbike. The crash left her with torn knees, and from that moment on, Claudine claimed that Gypsy's legs and spine were no longer functioning properly. This led to Gypsy using a wheelchair, marking a significant turning point in her life. Before the accident, Gypsy had only experienced minor ailments, but after being confined to a wheelchair, her health seemed to deteriorate rapidly. She could no longer attend regular school, so Claudine decided to homeschool her instead. Gypsy found comfort in reading, particularly the Harry Potter books, which she used to help improve her English. Claudine's neighbors were well aware of Gypsy's condition, and they felt immense sympathy for her. Meanwhile, Rod continued to send money every month to support his daughter's care. Various NGOs also offered assistance, helping Gypsy and Claudine manage their mounting medical needs. As a result, Gypsy became somewhat of a local figure, a young girl always seen in a wheelchair, constantly ill, and battling what appeared to be numerous disabilities. Gypsy was said to suffer from multiple illnesses, including leukemia, asthma, and frequent seizures. She struggled with her vision and hearing, leading to a regimen of heavy medications. The side effects were severe. Her salivary glands were removed, and her teeth began to fall out. Despite these constant battles with her health, neither Gypsy nor Claudine ever gave up. Claudine worked tirelessly to ensure that Gypsy remained active, entering her in various events, from the Special Olympics to reading competitions, and even pop culture conventions. These public appearances only increased Gypsy's fame, as people admired her strength and vibrant personality despite her frail condition. If you look at photos of Gypsy during this time, her fragile state becomes painfully clear. She had no hair on her head due to alleged cancer treatments, and many of her teeth had fallen out. Both her physical and mental development seemed delayed, leaving her frail and weak. Her skin was pale, and she wore thick glasses because her vision had deteriorated significantly. Asthma made it difficult for her to breathe, so she relied on an oxygen cylinder around the clock. Eating was a challenge, requiring a feeding tube for nourishment. Gypsy couldn't run, walk, or play with other children, her life marked by constant physical limitations. Despite all her struggles, Gypsy was almost always seen with a smile on her face, and it was this smile that endeared her to everyone. When people in the community spoke of Gypsy, it wasn't her disabilities they remembered first. It was her bright, contagious smile. Claudine saw too, was admired. She devoted her entire life to caring for Gypsy, even resigning from her job to be by her daughter's side full-time. The bond between mother and daughter appeared unbreakable, and their strength in the face of adversity earned them the admiration of many. On August 29, 2005, Hurricane Katrina devastated Louisiana, leaving countless families homeless, including Claudine and Gypsy. Their entire house was destroyed, along with all of Gypsy's medical records. In the aftermath of the disaster, Claudine decided to relocate with Gypsy to Missouri. Upon arriving, Claudine began using a new name, Dee Dee. With the help of local NGOs, Dee Dee and Gypsy were given a new home, which became known as the Pink House. Life seemed to improve. Gypsy was even able to visit Disneyland multiple times through charitable programs. It wasn't long before Gypsy became well known in Missouri, just as she had in Louisiana. Gypsy quickly became popular in her new neighborhood, just as she had in Louisiana. Everyone knew about her mental and physical disabilities, and the community was always eager to help Dee Dee, Gypsy's mother. One of Gypsy's new friends was a girl named Aaliyah Woodmansey. The two spent a lot of time together, and Aaliyah would often introduce Gypsy to her other friends. They grew close, with Gypsy even sharing her deepest secrets with Aaliyah. Despite the move to Missouri, Gypsy's condition didn't seem to improve. Dee Dee continued taking Gypsy to countless hospitals, almost daily, in search of the best possible care for her daughter. Due to Dee Dee's frequent visits to medical facilities, nearly every hospital in Missouri had become familiar with both her and Gypsy. Their lives followed a predictable routine, constantly visiting hospitals, or seeking assistance from charitable organizations. Despite the endless stream of medical appointments, they still managed to find time for moments of relaxation. On June 9th, after returning home from a doctor's appointment, Dee Dee and Gypsy took some time to unwind. They watched a movie together, gave each other manicures, and shared a quiet dinner. Before going to bed that evening, Gypsy told her mother, "I promise I'll always be a good girl." It seemed like a tender moment that highlighted their close bond. However, just 5 days later, on June 14th, everything changed. Some unsettling posts surfaced on Dee Dee's Facebook account, shocking those who knew them. The first post simply stated, "That woman is dead." A second post, which appeared a few minutes later, contained more disturbing content, leaving their friends and family in disbelief. The posts were chilling. Dee Dee's friends were horrified. This was nothing like the woman they knew. Concerned for Dee Dee and Gypsy's safety, they rushed to their home to check on them. Among them were Kim and David, two of their closest neighbors. They knocked on the door, but no one answered. Initially, they thought perhaps the account had been hacked, and Dee Dee had likely taken Gypsy to the hospital as she often did. But then, they noticed something troubling. Dee Dee's car was still in the driveway. Dee Dee never went anywhere without her car, especially when taking Gypsy to the hospital. A growing sense of dread filled the air. Kim and David's instincts told them something was wrong. David decided to call the police. As they waited for the police to arrive, David began peeking through the windows, hoping to catch a glimpse of Dee Dee or Gypsy inside, but instead, he saw something that made their fears even worse. 3 wheelchairs, all belonging to Gypsy. Gypsy couldn't go anywhere without them, and seeing the wheelchairs inside the house, along with the parked car, made it clear something terrible had happened. When the police arrived, they entered the house, bracing for the worst. At first, nothing seemed out of place. All the valuables were untouched. Everything appeared normal, until they reached Dee Dee's bedroom. What they found inside left them stunned. Dee Dee was lying in her bed, her entire body covered in blood. It looked like the blood had been poured over her, but it wasn't. It was her own. Dee Dee had been stabbed 17 times, in what could only be described as a brutal, violent attack. As the police processed the scene, one crucial question remained. Where was Gypsy? Despite searching the house from top to bottom, they couldn't find any trace of Gypsy. With Dee Dee dead and Gypsy missing, the police knew they had to act fast. Was Gypsy kidnapped? Or was something even more sinister at play? The investigation quickly escalated. When a child is believed to be kidnapped, time is of the essence. And with Gypsy's physical and intellectual disabilities, the urgency was even greater. The first break in the case came when the police traced the disturbing Facebook posts back to an IP address. It led them to a man named Nicholas Godejohn, a resident of Wisconsin, more than 800 kilometers away from Missouri. The connection baffled the police. Why would someone so far away post such horrifying messages on Dee Dee's account? But with no other leads, they knew they had to follow this trail to find Gypsy. Determined to find answers, the police traveled from Missouri to Wisconsin to track down Nicholas Godejohn. When they arrived at his home, they were shocked by what they found. Gypsy was there. She was alive, but something wasn't right. Gypsy didn't have a single scratch on her, and she seemed to be living comfortably with Nicholas. More surprising still, Gypsy, who had always been portrayed as severely disabled, was walking, talking, laughing, without a wheelchair, oxygen tank, or feeding tube in sight. The police were already in disbelief over Gypsy's condition, but their shock deepened during her interrogation. The truth that came to light was beyond anything they could have imagined. Gypsy had never been sick. She had never suffered from leukemia, asthma, or any of the numerous ailments she had been treated for throughout her life. And even more, Gypsy didn't even know her true age. The revelations were staggering, and to truly understand how they got to this point, we need to go back to the beginning. Up until now, you may have believed that Gypsy was a chronically ill child, lovingly cared for by her devoted mother. But the truth was far darker. Gypsy had been perfectly healthy from birth. It was Dee Dee who was suffering from something far more sinister, Munchausen syndrome by proxy. This disorder compels a caregiver, often a parent, to fabricate or exaggerate illnesses in someone under their care, to gain sympathy, attention, and validation from others. In Dee Dee's case, she used Gypsy's false ailments to make herself the center of attention, manipulating doctors, friends, and the entire community. Since Gypsy's early childhood, Dee Dee shuffled her from one hospital to another, convincing doctors that her daughter suffered from a long list of serious illnesses. In reality, Gypsy exhibited none of the symptoms her mother described. Dee Dee had some knowledge of nursing, which she used to manipulate doctors by describing specific symptoms that aligned with various diseases. She even went as far as giving Gypsy medications that would mimic the symptoms of the diseases she claimed her daughter had. One disturbing example of Dee Dee's manipulation was when she applied numbing cream to Gypsy's gums, causing her to drool uncontrollably, since Gypsy couldn't close her mouth properly. Dee Dee claimed to the doctors that her daughter's salivary glands were no longer functioning, and she needed surgery. Shockingly, the ruse worked. The doctors believed Dee Dee, and they even performed surgery to remove Gypsy's salivary glands. This is just one instance of the lengths Dee Dee would go to, manipulating the healthcare system, and ultimately her own daughter's life. You might be wondering, if Gypsy was never truly sick, how did all these doctors miss the signs? Surely there were scans, tests, something that should have revealed the truth. So why didn't any doctor stop Dee Dee? The answer lies in Dee Dee's incredible ability to manipulate not only the medical community, but everyone around her. She had mastered the art of convincing people. But there was one doctor who saw through her lies. This doctor suspected that Dee Dee was intentionally making Gypsy sick. He voiced his concerns to his colleagues, but what happened next only adds to the tragedy of this case. However, Dee Dee had built a wall of trust around herself. Not only did the community believe her, but so did various NGOs and charitable organizations. Her reputation for being a devoted mother, so deeply involved in her daughter's care, was so strong that the doctor feared speaking out. He worried that if he said anything, people wouldn't believe him. And even worse, it could ruin his reputation. So, he stayed silent. After Dee Dee and Gypsy moved to Missouri, anytime a new doctor asked why there were no medical records from Gypsy's past, Dee Dee always had a ready excuse. She claimed that Hurricane Katrina had destroyed everything. In reality, there were no legitimate medical records for Gypsy, only Dee Dee's lies. Many doctors, despite hearing Dee Dee's exaggerated claims and seeing Gypsy's frail condition, didn't question her. After all, who would suspect a mother of lying about her child's health? They simply accepted Dee Dee's story and proceeded with treatment. If any doctor expressed doubt, Dee Dee would simply move on to a new one. During every appointment, Dee Dee controlled the entire conversation. She never allowed Gypsy to speak directly to the doctors, preventing Gypsy from accidentally revealing the truth. Dee Dee's control over Gypsy was absolute. She manipulated her daughter through promises and rewards, saying things like, "If you don't say anything, I'll take you to the movies, buy you toys, or let you play." Being a child, Gypsy trusted her mother completely and believed she was looking out for her. Dee Dee had created an entire world where she was the hero, and Gypsy was her gravely ill daughter. In this fabricated reality, Gypsy truly believed she was sick. She heard it from her mother her whole life, from the doctors, and through the constant trips to the hospital. Over time, Gypsy became convinced that her mother's lies were the truth. Gypsy had no reason to doubt her mother. Dee Dee had isolated her from the outside world most of her life. In second grade, Dee Dee pulled Gypsy out of school, making sure she wouldn't make friends or share her thoughts with anyone. Dee Dee controlled everything: what Gypsy wore, what she ate, what she did, and even who she could meet. Even more disturbingly, Dee Dee shaved Gypsy's head regularly, telling her it was because of the cancer treatments. Gypsy never had the chance to grow her hair back, further reinforcing the illusion of illness to everyone around them. When Gypsy asked her mother why her head needed to be shaved, Dee Dee would respond by saying, "Your hair is going to fall out from the cancer treatment anyway, so let's just shave it now." The extent of Dee Dee's manipulation is hard to imagine, but as Gypsy grew older, she began to sense that something wasn't right. She started to wonder if she might be more like the other kids her age. She longed to make friends, to go outside, and she even felt attracted to boys. Gypsy wasn't content with her life under Dee Dee's control, and it wasn't as though she hadn't tried to escape. Gypsy ran away from home several times, but every time, Dee Dee found her and brought her back. Each time Gypsy ran away, Dee Dee punished her. The punishment was harsh. She would keep Gypsy handcuffed to her bed for up to 2 weeks. Sometimes she would deprive her of food for days. Dee Dee's manipulation was so strong that eventually Gypsy would relent and return to believing in her mother's lies. That was until Gypsy met Nicholas Godejohn. You might remember Nicholas, the man from Wisconsin, connected to those disturbing Facebook posts. When they first met online, not much was known about him, but later it would be revealed that Nicholas had a history of mental illness and even a prior criminal record. Gypsy and Nicholas first met on a dating website. What started as an online friendship quickly turned into something deeper. Within just 2 weeks of talking, they were convinced they were soulmates. Nicholas began to dream of their future together, planning to move to Missouri, find a job, buy a house, and eventually marry Gypsy. They even discussed the names of the children they would one day have. For Gypsy, this relationship was more than love. It was her only hope of escaping her mother's control. I'm telling you this, so you can understand how serious their relationship had become. Their feelings were intense, and it's important to note, Gypsy wasn't hiding the truth from Nicholas. She told him everything, how her mother controlled every aspect of her life, how she was never allowed to leave the house, and how Dee Dee had been deceiving everyone for years. For the first time in her life, Gypsy had found someone she could trust, someone she could love. She was done hiding her relationship with Nicholas and longed to escape her mother's grip. The first person Gypsy confided in about Nicholas was her friend Aaliyah. She even showed Aaliyah their chats. But Aaliyah felt something was off. Nicholas's messages were aggressive, and it made Aaliyah uncomfortable. She warned Gypsy to be careful and to stay away from him. But Gypsy was in love, and as they say, love is blind. Soon after, Gypsy and Nicholas devised a plan. Nicholas would come to Missouri, and they would meet Dee Dee by chance, pretending to be strangers. Gypsy hoped this encounter would make her mother believe they didn't know each other. On the day of the planned meeting, Dee Dee and Gypsy went to see a movie. Gypsy believed that meeting Nicholas by chance would convince her mother that everything was innocent. But things didn't go as planned. Dee Dee grew suspicious and caught on to the scheme. Furious, she threatened Gypsy, forbidding her from ever seeing Nicholas again. Gypsy had hoped that her mother might warm to Nicholas, or at least accept him. But Dee Dee was not going to sway. After this incident, Dee Dee's control over Gypsy became even more severe. After the incident at the theater, life with Dee Dee became unbearable for Gypsy. Her mother's control was suffocating, and Gypsy was desperate for a way out. She didn't want to live without Nicholas. So, that's when Gypsy and Nicholas devised a deadly plan. Gypsy bought a bus ticket for Nicholas, bringing him from Wisconsin to Missouri. She even sent Nicholas a video of Dee Dee's bedroom, so he could familiarize himself with the layout. On the night of June 9th, after Dee Dee had fallen asleep, Gypsy unlocked the door and let Nicholas into the house. She handed him a knife, tape, and gloves. Nicholas entered Dee Dee's bedroom and brutally stabbed her 17 times, ending her life. While Nicholas carried out the murder, Gypsy sat in the bathroom, with her hands over her ears, trying to block out her mother's screams. After the murder, the couple checked into a hotel, acting as though nothing had happened. They ate pizza, watched movies, and stayed there for 2 days before traveling back to Nicholas's home in Wisconsin. Then, on June 14th, came the infamous Facebook post. Gypsy, using Dee Dee's account, posted a chilling message that shocked everyone. "That bitch is dead." This was followed by an even more disturbing post. "I slashed that fat pig and raped her sweet innocent daughter." Her scream was so loud, LOL. The posts horrified everyone who knew Dee Dee and Gypsy. Their friends and neighbors were in disbelief. Something had gone terribly wrong. Concerned, they rushed to Dee Dee and Gypsy's home. When no one answered the door, they feared the worst. The police were called, and the disturbing posts were traced back to an IP address in Wisconsin. It led them directly to Nicholas Gaudejohn's home. When the police arrived in Wisconsin, they were stunned by what they found. Gypsy was there, alive, and with Nicholas. What was even more shocking, Gypsy was walking, talking, and laughing, without a wheelchair, without an oxygen tank, and without any medical equipment. The frail, sickly girl they thought they knew was perfectly healthy. As the police interrogated Gypsy, the truth began to unravel. Everything the world believed about Gypsy was a lie, carefully crafted by Dee Dee Blanchard. Gypsy had never been sick. She had never suffered from leukemia, asthma, or any of the countless conditions her mother had claimed. Gypsy had been a victim of her mother's twisted lies, a victim of Munchausen syndrome by proxy. This shocking truth left the police, and the world, in disbelief. The innocent, fragile girl, who had been seen as a victim for so long, had orchestrated the murder of her own mother. Gypsy and Nicholas were arrested, and the legal system now faced a complex question. How should Gypsy, a victim of abuse, be punished for a crime she committed out of desperation? In jail, Gypsy expressed something remarkable. For the first time in her life, she felt free. No longer under Dee Dee's control, Gypsy began to thrive. Her health improved, her mental state became stronger, and she realized what freedom truly felt like. She regretted that things had escalated to murder, but she felt there had been no other way to escape her mother's suffocating hold. Gypsy was sentenced to 10 years in prison for her role in the murder. Nicholas Gaudejohn, the one who carried out the actual killing, was sentenced to life in prison. Nicholas, to this day, maintains that he acted out of love for Gypsy, believing he was protecting her, and that he could never love anyone else the way he loved her. In December 2023, after nearly 8 years behind bars, Gypsy Rose Blanchard was released from prison. Waiting for her outside was her father Rod, her stepmother Christy, and a man named Ryan Scott Anderson, a 37-year-old teacher from Louisiana. Ryan wasn't just any supporter. He was Gypsy's husband. Allegedly, Ryan had first written to Gypsy in 2020, and over time, they grew close. They were married while Gypsy was still in prison. On June 27, 2022, when she was released, Gypsy was 32 years old, stepping into a world she had never truly experienced as a free woman. Once out of prison, Gypsy began to explore life for the first time. Everything was new: social media, shopping malls, and even celebrating Christmas. She created an Instagram account, posting her first selfie with the caption, "First selfie of freedom." The post went viral, and almost overnight, Gypsy became a social media sensation. But public opinion was divided. Some believed that Gypsy should not receive fame or recognition after her involvement in her mother's murder. Others sympathized with her, recognizing the years of abuse she had endured. There are even those who believe that if Gypsy was released, Nicholas should have been released too. After all, it was Nicholas who carried out the murder, but Gypsy was the one who planned it. This raises difficult questions about justice. Was Nicholas simply a pawn in Gypsy's desperate attempt to escape her mother's control? Or was he equally responsible for the crime? What's clear is that Gypsy endured years of psychological and emotional torture. If she hadn't rebelled, if she hadn't reached out to Nicholas, what more might Dee Dee have done to her? The case leaves us with conflicting feelings. On one hand, murder is never the answer. But on the other hand, Gypsy had been trapped in a psychological prison for years, under her mother's control. Today, Gypsy is using her platform to raise awareness about Munchausen syndrome by proxy. She hopes to prevent other children from suffering, as she did. Gypsy dreams of a world where no child is subjected to the same manipulation and cruelty that she endured. And with that, we conclude the tragic and haunting case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, a case that serves as both a cautionary tale and a reminder of the dangerous extremes a parent can go to and the lengths a child will take to break free. This case leaves us with difficult questions. Was Gypsy truly a victim who saw no other way out? Or should she be held fully accountable for her mother's murder? It's easy to feel conflicted. Gypsy endured years of abuse, manipulation, and isolation. But murder is never the right answer. If Gypsy hadn't rebelled, what more might Dee Dee have done to her? Gypsy's actions were wrong, and she has acknowledged her mistake. But today, she dedicates her life to raising awareness, to ensure that no other child has to suffer, as she did. Gypsy's story is one of unimaginable deceit, manipulation, and desperation. A tragic reminder of the fragility of trust and the lengths a child will go to in order to escape a life of torment. And so, we conclude the unsettling, heartbreaking case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, a story of lies, control, and the ultimate cost of freedom.